I'm Sam Warburton, and you're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate.
And he's going to score Bristol's third try.
What a
But
try.
what great play by Augustine Pichot.
And Bristol have made a bit of history, winning the European Challenge Cup for the first time ever.
And Bristol have won. They've won the local derby.
You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate, a Bristol Bears podcast made by fans for fans. We're 2.5 season card holders at Ashton Gate who love the club, the game and all things Bears. Well, we slipped to a 5th defeat in a row at the StoneX on Saturday, but battled hard for a cheeky try bonus point, which was the least we deserved. We scored a couple of worldies, but we also shipped 7, and if Owen Farrell had put his boots on the right way round, it could have been a lot worse. We review the game with help from a few listeners and the chair of the Supporters Club, and then look forward to the Rifles Cup on Saturday, which really is now a must win game. We also hear from Ed from the Cherry Jam pod, who gives us his take on Gloucester's similarly disappointing start to the season, but also provides us with some insight into their women's team, who take on ours on Friday night. On that note, we also review the Bears women's visit to Sandy Park this afternoon, with help from yet another freelance roving fan reporter. We have tentacles everywhere. So strap in and listen to Lee and Miles and me, Pete, as we climb aboard the Bristol Bears rollercoaster yet again for a cheeky beer and a bit of rugby banter. Well, lads, good to see you. We're actually on Zoom tonight because we couldn't all meet at our new spiritual home, which is the Bristol Beer Factory tap room studio bar, but we're there we're imagining we're there with all that rain and all the people banging in the background, and obviously the BBC watching Planet Earth 3. I mean, it feels a bit boring being back on the screen, doesn't it? Anyway, Lee, what about you, mate? How are you?
Yeah, well, I have to hold my hands up. I'm nothing if not honest. The reason probably we are on Zoom tonight is because I've been away. It's been my partner's birthday this weekend. So we've been away, hence the reason we are on Zoom tonight. So I have to admit, I'm going to have to rely on you boys to provide the bulk of today's podcast, which I don't know, is quite frightening, really.
Well, that takes me nicely on to Miles. So, Miles, a lot of pressure on your shoulders tonight. How are you
absolutely.
feeling?
Well, the problem is, we do not like to deceive listeners ever, do we?
No.
And I might say that 2 out of the 3 of us are not enjoying a cheeky beer this evening, but we're enjoying a glass of red wine.
Oh.
So, we need to be back at our spiritual home next week because this is all going wrong. Anyway, I'm grand. I had a lovely weekend. And actually, I told you boys today, for the first time since moving to BS3, I was down the City ground watching football this afternoon. I felt dirty. It was Bristol City women versus Manchester United women, but a great turnout. 14,000 supporters there. Some lionesses involved in Manchester United. Sadly, City went down to a 2-0 defeat, but I loved it, as did my son. Anyway, let's go on to talk about some rugby, shall we?
Yeah, I don't quite know what to say about that, to be honest.
I know.
I mean, Miles, when we first met you, your only interest was your allotment, and look at you now.
Exactly, mate. Let's not put apart the cheap tickets, £1 a child, shall we? There's nothing to do with why we were down the.
What, you mean you tried to sneak in as a kid for £1? That's outrageous. Oh well. Anyway, boys, let's crack on because we're here to talk about rugby. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we got a cheeky bonus point. It's always good to get a cheeky one, and it was a good game. But I think before we talk about it, let's hear what some of our listeners have said. And again, I sent out my customary short, sharp summaries tweet because someone had a go at me about calling it posts, that I shouldn't be bowing down to Elon Musk and I should still call it Twitter. So. And I did. I don't know if you saw the one I sent out this morning, boys. I've now clarified some clear rules and guidelines about how these things should be written. One post only. I want to see a bit of passion. I want lots of insight, and I can't remember the other one. So, and I think people have responded.
You sounded a bit like an enforcer, Pete. To be honest, I thought we were more like a, let's let it run free a little bit more.
I mean, I think I sounded just like what I am, which is a teacher. And
Teacher.
sometimes you have to have a proper framework for people to work to. Anyway, let's go. So the first one I'm going to read out is from Rihanna Storyteller, somebody who interacts with us quite a lot. And this was a spirited performance from the team. That try started by Gabs, and there's an emoji there. So I think it just is kind of an excitement emoji. Shame we keep losing these matches, though. Not a surprise against the Cheetahs, though. A few panicky moments led to our demise. Looking forward to Gloucester, hoping the momentum we are building will give us 5 points finally. See you there. So I said, we'll be in the clubhouse area post-match. Miles will be wearing a carnation. And then there was a quick backtrack. But then I noticed a quick backtracking from Rihanna saying, oh, if the train strikes don't mess it up, I might feel brave enough. I might come and say hello. I think there's a lot of backtracking now, realising Miles is going to be there.
Was that followed by an emoji with the amen sign that there is going to be train strikes this weekend?
Yeah, because didn't really mean that he wanted to meet us. Anyway, let's move on. Steve Britton. At Steve Britton 72, before the game and after their second try, I feared we were in for a shellacking. That's why I chose him, boys. Love it. In fact, I've got to say that he wasn't the only tweet that used the word shellacking. So we have obviously set a trend there, which is good. But shellacking has always been associated with Saracens, because I think it was Jez from their Fezcast a couple of years ago who introduced that word. So it's good to see it. So anyway, Steve said before the game and after their second try, I feared we were in for a shellacking. Half time, I thought we could potentially win it, only to have our hopes dashed. Some good performances. We need consistency, and then the wins will come. Hopefully next week. So positive. Next one was Theo Wilson at TheoW45, a new tweeter. And he said, great fight from Bristol. On the surface, much better performance. But, in capital letters, still another loss. We got outscored 7-4. And if Owen Farrell could kick, it could have turned into a beatdown. Sounds like he's a youngster. Don't know what a beatdown is. It sounds like something out of a grime track or something like that. I'm still not convinced with this staff and think changes are needed. Okay, cheers, Theo. We've got Henry Dickinson at Henry Dickinson 9. We weren't terrible. Lots of heart and a bit sharper in attack at times. But 7 tries conceded is ridiculous. You are never winning that game. And if Faz could kick, it would have been pants down. Lansdowne hasn't invested for plucky losers. Lose next week and the season is gone? ? So, right to the point from Henry. Like it. A lot of passion there. We've also got...
what an amazing... Pete, sorry to butt in. What an amazing English name that is, Henry Dickinson. That is, I love that name.
He's out Miles to Miles there, isn't he? I can imagine Henry walking around with a cane in Clifton with the top hat
and a smoking pipe.
Yeah, or a little, what's it called? A little cheroot like that. Yeah, well, a pipe. You're right. He's definitely. So, Henry, have we got you completely wrong? Anyway, let's keep going. We've got Paul Hibbard, which is at phibbard2. He said early inaccuracies gifted Sarries 3 tries. Set piece, particularly the line out, was the launch pad for the comeback. Unbelievable bad luck with the charge downs, and bounce of the ball generally went Sarries' way. No complaints about the ref. Pearce's top draw. That's quite interesting because a lot of people did complain about the ref for various reasons. But fair play to Paul. He's the voice of reason there. Couple more. Louis Tasker at Tasker RR. Too narrow in defence. Rush defence is good, but we need to mix it up rather than do it every time and allow the other team to work out how to beat it. Attack on the whole is good, but too frantic at times. Need to learn how to slow it down at times. Set plays were brilliant. Fair play to Louis. Nice insight there. And then I thought we'd finish off with a kind of contextual one. I thought this was quite a good one. It's from someone I've read out before, so he gets a second go. And it's from Hammy Hambley, which is at official JAH. And it's almost bullet points. It says 4 against an informed Sarries. Sheedy packed his kicking boots. Internationals playing players in correct positions. Losing bonus point. Roll on the cherry and white. So, yeah, kind of summarised it right to that point. So that's really good. It's great to hear our listeners again. A few themes in there we'll probably pick up on in a minute. But before we do, I also commissioned yet another roving reporter. This time I went to Kaylee Parker, who is a friend of ours, who is also the chair of the Supporters Association. She works tirelessly with that marquee outside Ashton Gate on home games. And she sent me a very brief half-time report and then a full-time one. So let's have a listen to it now.
Hiya, Pete. Coming in with a very different report at halftime than I thought I might have been. Basics still not that glorious, I don't think, but when we're getting hold of the ball and keeping hold of it, we're doing some really good work. I think the most upsetting thing of this half is the Saracens think Baby Shark is an acceptable celebratory song, and it's not, it's awful, but maybe that's just because it's stuck in my head. Long way to go, big 40 minutes to come, but kicking's on point from us where it's not from Faz, which is delightful but unusual, so just keeping everything across. So I think all I can offer at the final whistle are some cliches. It's the hope that kills you being the main one, and also a little bit all for coat and no knickers, just in terms of we can do the glorious stuff really, really well. Like that try was absolutely beautiful, one of the best I've seen, but we can't function a line out. So frustrating. Again, not the absolute hammering that I was expecting, and I'm really pleased to see that. And there were some really good moments there. But until we get these basics functioning and get a little bit more clinical, it's not going to come together for us. Also, thankfully, Faz put his boots on the wrong feet today. Otherwise, that score would have looked even worse, I think. There's definitely stuff there that we can work with, and the team do have the potential, but something needs to click a little bit better before we can start winning again.
Okay, boys. Well, it's nice to see that Kaylee focused on all the important things, such as the fact the Sarries fans were singing Baby Shark. But I can see where she's coming from. And it was her surprise at being, as us winning at half-time, was probably mirrored by quite a lot of people who were there and also watching it on TV. But of course, as is the way, she made the point that it's disappointing that, at the end of the game, we didn't win, and she kind of apologized for using cliches, but it's like never apologize for using cliches, Kaylee, because that's all we do. That's all we've got. So she used, actually, I can't remember her cliches. It shows she used the cliche of the hope that kills us. But she also used the cliche, which I can't quite remember, which was something to do with the fact that we do amazing things every now and again, and then do lots of really stupid things at the same time. And actually, that was kind of, I wrote the article for the evening post, the Bristol Post, for tomorrow. Post. I know I keep calling it the Evening Post, and I kind of made the same point. Is that like we're kind of a team of moments. And actually, we're now living in a world of cliches, fine margins. It's the hope that kills us. We're not a million miles away. So some good stuff from Kaylee. So let's get into it then. So Lee, you look like, even though you didn't watch the game, you look like you got something to say. So get into it, son.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say, because obviously, because I've been away. So what I was doing is I was following it on Live Score, and I've got the notifications. And it was such a bizarre, just talking about Kaylee then, it was so weird because obviously initially I thought, oh my goodness, like pinged twice and we're already 10-0 down after, 10 minutes or whatever it was. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be like, do I just mute the notifications now and get on with my day and just kind of, at the end of the evening, go back and look at the score and find out what a disaster it's been. But I kept going with it, and then we came back into the game, and it was Kaylee is perfectly, absolutely spot on with, it is a roller coaster, isn't it, being a Bears fan? Because I thought we were way down, and the next minute we came back, and I thought, oh, we might actually get into this again, we might win this. And then it was such a roller coaster, and it was so weird following it on notifications on your phone, but obviously you boys saw the game. So how was it? How was it in real time?
I mean, I was watching it live, and you're right, and Kaylee's right. When they scored 2 tries pretty quickly, and we did look a little bit 6s and 7s. We were starting to make mistakes, and I genuinely thought, this is it. This could be a cricket score, a bit like a bit like the Bath game last week, actually, where at a point I was starting to think about cricketing analogies, but we were kind of given a bit of a lifeline by Owen Farrell because his kicking was appalling. He actually hit the post 3 times, 2 of them to kind of keep the ball out, and then one later on in the second half that actually just squeezed it in. I mean, it was weird. But
he out-sheeded Sheedy.
Yeah, he out-sheeded Sheedy. And I should just say at this point how brilliant it was to see Callum get 100% strike rate. Honestly, he was superb. It was just like he looked at him and think, how did the boy ever miss? So I think
he had a bang to a head last weekend in a match.
Yeah,
and it's
but I think exactly. So I mean, that could be it. I mean, I think the fact it wasn't blowing a hurricane and rain horizontal in his face kind of helped as well. But yeah, I mean, fair play to him. I think, and that's actually the measure of the man, is that he thrusts back into battle. And he's actually rectified something that he was probably, because he's an honest sort of guy, he was probably feeling upset about, not seeing us through, and he shouldn't have done, as we said last week. He's just one factor, but so that was good. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of I think everybody was quite surprised. You could even hear it on the TV. It sounded like the Saracens fans were quite surprised. I mean, that we went in 6 points ahead. And of course, I think I tweeted something out saying, this is brilliant. It's a real turnaround because we'd been kind of sloppy. But I would love it, just love it, if we could see this through. And of course, I'm sure that's what they talked about at half time. And unfortunately, which is often the way, immediately after talking about something, it didn't quite happen. And we didn't really get off to a great start in the second half and kind of let them back in it. So it was a very bizarre first 40, to be fair. Yeah, Lee, what do you want to say?
I just want to say, I don't know if there's any, one of our listeners will probably back this up in stats, but why does it always feel like that between 40 and 46 minutes, it always feels like we're going to concede, or we do concede a try? And I don't know if, obviously we can go back and, look at the data and find out if that's correct, but it always feels like that's going to happen. And after chatting at half time, like you say, we'd expect to be quite tight, wouldn't we? And, get our lines together. And I don't know, it always feels like that time is such a worrying time at the start of the second half for us.
It was.
Go, Miles, what do you think?
I mean, you're right, mate. I mean, all of our tries, I feel, we had some good driving maul tries. Let's not take that away, didn't we? Genji scored, didn't he, on 34 minutes. Ogre tailed off the back of a driving maul and questionably climbed over the line, which Luke Pearce was more than happy with on 39 minutes. And Batley's amazingly powerful run for the first try was just brilliant. But you're right, the first kickoff in the second half, Bristol let the ball bounce, didn't they? Twice. McIntyre and Randall didn't know who was going to collect it. Straight to Sarries, and Atoja went over the line for a score. And very fortunately, it was deemed to have been knocked on by Luke Pearce. But again, how many times? You're right. That was about 40 minutes from the kickoff. Are we going to let the ball bounce into another opponent's hands and then just score from there? So it's just worrying. And then you're right. To be fair, an excellent crossfield kick from Farrell to Lewington, wasn't it? 44 minutes.
Yeah.
But in that first half, the writing was on the wall, wasn't it? We didn't look like as if we'd had a great halftime speak, and Sarries came out and scored nearly 2 tries.
I think it's fair to say, though, and I'm looking back through the notes that I made on the game, is that when we then scored, I mean, we had 2 worldies actually in that game. I mean, I think, and this is a question I was going to ask. I think that Joe Batley's was a worldie. Great little run from Shido, great vision, popped it to Batley, who then, went off a couple of steps, launched over the line. But then in the second half, we scored towards the end. We scored with Kieran Marmion on the back of an unbelievable bit of skill from Gabsy Bitoya, who didn't just like cut through their defence. He just threw the subtlest of subtle dummies. And I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, they just went completely opposite. It was beautiful to see. And of course, your man Thacker on his shoulder pops there. But the point I was going to say about that was that not an out of this worldie? If Batley's was a worldie, I think Marvin's was an out of this worldie. But the point I was actually trying to make, apart from that, was that took us pretty close. It took us to 34-31 with about 9 minutes to go. And actually at that point, I thought, you know what, we can win this. We've been given a chance. Farrell had kept missing. You know, we shouldn't really have been that close, but we were that close. And to me, that was the moment where we have to focus, where we have to make sure we make no mistakes whatsoever. And unfortunately, I think they booted one long. The ball was allowed to bounce again. And then I think Vakatawa then got a fairly loopy hospital pass on his 22. Poor bloke got then isolated. They won the penalty. And then on the basis of that, they went to lineouts. And then I think on the basis of that, there was a couple of penalties. Fitz got carded. They scored. And it was all over. I just thought, this is so Bristol. Lee.
I thought you were queuing that up for miles to turn around and say, I told you Vakatawa wasn't fit.
Well, I'll let you off this week.
We might come on to that later.
Rather condensed highlights. I couldn't really comment on his fitness this week, but don't you worry, boys. I will be on it next week. But I think
anyway, lads, there's a couple of other things I want to talk about. So, Miles, I mean, the frustrating thing was that our forwards, I thought, were pretty dominant, particularly in the first half, especially in the scrum, although a few odd decisions went their way. But somehow in the second half, Sarries sort of got their rolling maul going. And I don't know, why do you think that was?
Yeah, I mean, they had probably a good kick up the butt at half time. I think you're right. In the first half, the scrum was pretty messy, wasn't it? There's some scrum penalties going from either side. I think, was it Sinclair versus Christian Judge, etc. And it's something I think Fitzharding sort of alluded to at the end of the game. Really.
Did he allude to it?
He alluded to.
Oh, my old.
So I'm sorry about that. The fact that they got their mojo together in the driving maul. And it's funny, isn't it, that he suggested, really, unless you shut that down within the first metre of Sarries pushing, it's flipping difficult on a quick 4G pitch to stop the momentum.
And he also said a 3G pitch, actually.
3G pitch, sorry. Yeah. We'll backtrack 3G pitch. I'm sorry, I thought you had to pick me up on that. But, you know, there were some driving mauls from both sides, and it was a fast pitch. But, yeah, ultimately, they got their act together, and it was extremely difficult to stop. And as a result, you know, Fitz got carded at 75 minutes for the collapsing the maul, didn't he? Poor lad just got absolutely squashed under sort of 7 or 8 players. And then Jamie George got the driving maul try again at the end to make it the final score 39-31.
I do. So it's a good point you make. I do sometimes think that they should change that penalty. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a penalty, but rather than collapsing the maul, it's like you cause them to trip over your inert body on the floor because you did spat out somewhere. But
luckily, because I think Bats had already potentially, actually the penalty had already come, hadn't it? Bats had come in from the side. So to be fair, genuine penalty. And you're right. You know, you're getting spat out under a herd of cows. I mean, what do you do in that situation?
The point you made is good. I mean, they seem to get their rolling maul together, and in the end, we couldn't really deal with it. And Fitz did point out that was the first tries that we conceded this season, and that they had a very specific system for defending them, which clearly works. But I do wonder whether it's something to do with the pitch, and that once they get momentum and it's their home ground, you know, they almost are unstoppable. Lee, you wanted to say something on that, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to question maybe, you know, Sarries getting a boot up the backside at half time and their players responding. Are we suggesting our players don't respond in the same sort of way, or are we just saying
I don't
Sarries
know.
players reacted differently, or?
I mean, I think they would have gone into the half time feeling pretty deflated, or maybe not deflated, but quite surprised. So I think there was always going to be a reaction. I mean, they're too good a side for there not to be a reaction. So I guess the point we're trying to make is that we needed to be really, really ready for that reaction. And to a certain extent we were, because, we did get back in really close to them. But I just think it goes back to a really simple thing, is that we just have to get the fundamentals right more of the time at the moments that count. And there was, regardless of the fact that it was close, and we played well in moments, and we looked like we played with a lot of heart and desire, there were too many times where the fundamentals just let them off the hook, or stopped our momentum. And I don't really know what the answer is. We talk about this all the time. It's like, how can we do this?
I guess the outsiders watching their match would argue that after half time they scored 4 tries to our 1. So I mean, how do you defend that? I mean, that's, they got a kick up the butt at second half, and you're right, that sort of Ibitoye to Marmion try, you could say was an absolutely worldy try, but
or an out of the world
try. But that is no good if subsequently in that same second half, in a 40-minute session, we go down 4 tries. We cannot ever win a match scoring worldy tries. I mean, and we love it as fans, but the basics are they were extremely well-drilled team. They're the champions, and they had a system that worked.
But I almost hesitate to say this because I feel like I'm criticising I'm being a hypocrite. But given that, we actually did pretty well against them, and I think most of us thought we were going to get a drubbing, and some people thought we were going to send reserves there, but we didn't. We sent a pretty solid team there, as you might say, Mark, and it was probably our strongest team we could have sent. And we got quite close to the champs, and it's just so frustrating that we can't quite get over that line.
But ultimately, though, Pete, I think it is another defeat, and I'm not criticising the players on the pitch, because I think they put everything out. You could see that it was 100% effort and determination as always. But it is another defeat. It's another close defeat. But we can't, we're not signed up to be consistently having defeats like this. We're five on the trot now. And it's really, it is a weird scenario, because I thought we'd probably lose by about 14 points initially. So it's good that we didn't, that it was much closer than that. But ultimately, we're still losing games, and we can't be happy with that, can we? It's it just can't keep happening. I mean, where are we going with it? This can't be the end result, can it? Losing consistently by, close margins can't be the end result for Bristol Bears.
No, I think you're right. Well, look, let's just finish off the chat with a little bit of let's just focus on some of the good stuff. So let's quickly go. Any players that you want to mention? I mean, we've mentioned Joe Batley, who I think is now the new Joycey. I think he had a great game, and he was a talisman. We know he is, but he was really on it. And I think James Dunn as well in the second row. The fact that we were pretty dominant in the first half, the pack were all over them. We had our international front row. I mean, Ogre threw some great darts. He looks very good under pressure with the line out. There's some question about his defence, I've got to say, but ultimately he did a good job. And our back row got stuck in. I mean, what any other players you want to mention at all? Just in a positive light, I'm saying.
Well, I thought Dan Thomas played well again.
Yeah, I think
7, and again, he's playing in his natural position.
And it's what Hammy Hambley said. We had our players playing in the right positions. We had Dan Thomas at 7. We had Ogre throwing in. He's essentially a hooker as well. Now, I'm not saying that he's necessarily a change up on Harry Thacker, but having 2 really fast, really mobile quality hookers and Capon as well. I mean, we're in really good
Yeah.
position with hookers.
And obviously you'd already mentioned mentioned Pete that Sheedy had played well. So big shout out to Callum as well, because that takes a lot of guts to come back from, some of the
absolutely,
the comments from
what
last week.
Miles, what about Max Malins? Obviously, I haven't mentioned him yet. I mean, he was wearing tights, which is a bit embarrassing.
Well,
but,
yeah, but that's
what's your
because
thoughts?
he's used to that 3G pitch, isn't he?
Yeah.
I thought he had a good game actually. I mean,
Yeah.
the problem is, it was weird. The sort of the what I thought was a full match replay on TNT, it turned out to be like extended highlights. So I didn't really get to see a lot of Max. He had a nice interception,
did
but
play
I think
well.
there was a penalty before that. And there were a few little sort of social media comments that Rich Lane looked a little bit out of position defensively, and maybe because he's used to playing at fullback, and that's some work on we need this week to get him in the right positions.
Yeah.
Defensively on the wing, we know moving forward he's a fantastic player, don't we?
He's difficult. I mean, he's a fullback, isn't he? And he has played really well. But Max Malins did look class. I watched it live, and he did look class. And it's only a good thing.
And also, he's playing against his former team, and he's going to be up for that, isn't he? So.
I mean, the only thing I was wondering about was Bernard Yancey van Rensburg again did a big 80, and he was he punched he tried to punch a lot of holes, but I'm just worried that he's turning into the new Will Hurrell, in as much as he almost makes it's a compliment, but he almost makes that break, doesn't quite make it, and he pummels his way through. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's not really a comment. It's just a comment that I just love it in one of these days where he does power through the line and we see him. He's definitely owed, if he does break through, he's definitely owed a swallow dive, I reckon, over the line if he scores, because he's been putting some shifts in. Yeah, I mean, I think we proved, and this is, I know he's just said this, Lee, and I'll say it one more time. We've proved that we are a competitive team. And if we can create a platform, we can play off it, but we just have to be more consistent. But a lot of teams will lose at the StoneX this season. Although Bath didn't, did they? Which is a bit annoying, but there you go. Yeah. So I think, clearly what it does, and I think this was mentioned at the end of the game, it completely focuses their mind now that Saturday is just it has to be a 5-point win. It has to be as much for the table, but just for everybody's mental health. So in a good way.
And the fans alone, yeah.
I mean, it's a local derby, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be a brilliant atmosphere. And, I just feel like we need a win, don't we? Full stop.
Yeah. We need a win. We do. Right. Okay. Well, let's move on and let's talk about the game coming on Saturday. But before we have a quick chat about it, let's listen to my latest PPP with Ed Price from the Gloucester Cherry Jam podcast, who I caught up with today, actually. And let's hear what he said. Right then, Ed. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's get straight into it. Just like us, you had 2 early wins. Now you've got 5 defeats on the bounce, albeit 1 or 2 close ones. First question is, what's going wrong at Kingsholm?
Hello, darkness, my old friend. It's nice to see you again, Pete. It's just again another return to just pure misery at Gloucester Rugby Club. We, as you rightly say, we started very promisingly. We won all our pre-season, we won all our cup games through to the semi-final at near enough a canter. Won our first 2 games, although I think most Gloucester fans would heavily admit that the first game against Quins was a significant dose of luck to get a last-minute try, and it's just all gone really badly wrong since. I think Skivington tried to prevent the same mistakes of the past by rotation and keeping players fresh, but all that's done is just leave us with no continuity and even more injuries. So it didn't work twice over, and then each game is a different real reason or excuse for a poor performance. I think that the significant one this last weekend, as we record this, we've just come off the back of another bonus point defeat at home, this time to Leicester, was we didn't even look in the game. And Leicester weren't great. I mean, they won comfortably, and they didn't play a lot of rugby until the last 5-10 minutes. There are no short answers to this. I think probably George Skivington is the issue, and I know that we on the pod are at the point where we can't really see any sort of redemption at this point. We think he's going to go at the end of the season. And there is now a significant vocal element within the crowds, and certainly on social media, which should never be taken as gospel. But there's definitely a significant number of people saying, look, he needs to go now, which is shocking, really, because we're only, as I say, 7 games into the season. But this is 4 years, and we're getting worse. And I think we're at that point now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because he seems like a really nice guy. And I thought he looked like a really, really promising young coach. I mean, do you think it's him, or is it has he got the wrong team around him?
Fundamentally, then it's him, because he's the one who's appointed the team. There's always been question marks around the defensive structure. Don Waldup came in, and we shipped a lot of points initially. That seemed to tighten up over the last couple of seasons, but again, we're shipping points left, right, and centre again. Our goal line defence is absolutely atrocious. It's probably the worst in the league. And then all of the positive things that were built over the last couple of seasons. So you think about the rolling maul, which was almost unstoppable. Barely scored a try now. I think we scored one against Leicester at the weekend, but that's an oddity now. We brought in a new backs coach, and there are signs that it looks quite good and certainly off set phase. But once we go past 4 or 5 phases, it's headless chicken stuff. And fundamentally, we have been unlucky with injuries, but every club's got injuries. And then it comes back to why are our injuries more significant? Because we've recruited poorly. We've recruited in areas where we probably didn't need to recruit, and yet we haven't got a second row cover. We've also spent money with players who've been cropped for most of the time. I mean, Adam Hastings, great player, but he's injured all the time. And you've got someone like George Barton, who at the moment is being thrown into the deep end. He's been given his opportunity, and I'm not sure his style of rugby fits the style of rugby that we need to play. And teams are just exposing him and his weaknesses. So it's an overall picture, but I think the problem is George Skivington has now had 4 years, and every aspect is now down to him. The coaches, the players, the strategy, the tactics, it's all come from him, and it's all failing.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on something I was going to ask you, actually, is that you mentioned injuries. You've got Zach Mercer out, you've got Hastings out, as you mentioned, you've got Ruan Ackerman out, big players for you. And my question was going to be, are your understudies not quite up to it? And you kind of half answered that. I mean, I quite like the look at your guy, Clement, the number 8. But yeah, he looked like he got carded, didn't he, yesterday? I mean, is it just they're just lacking a little bit of experience?
I think there's certain players in certain positions where we are lacking experience and we're lacking a bit of quality. And you're right. You look at those. You sort of name those players. Plus, they also include Val Rapava, Ruskin. And you've got Jack Singleton's out. We've had issues around props, and certain props have been back and then suddenly injured again. We've lost our what appeared to be our first choice 9. Larby signed from London Irish, so we've had to bring in Mickey Young on loan. They are significant injuries in key positions, but when you think of last season, there were massive deficiencies in the second row, and they haven't been addressed. There were massive deficiencies in the centres, and they haven't really been addressed. We brought in Llewellyn, but he won't play him. So it's things like that where you're thinking, well, I'm not sure really now where you can go with it. The players have got to get experience, so at least they're playing. But it's like anything, we're now in a position where we're not even able to hold on to leads. We're dropping 9-point leads with 5 minutes to go against Exeter. We're not in games. I mean, the Bath game was great for 40 minutes, but Bath basically just turned on a bit of power, and we couldn't cope with it. I think the only game I would say this season where I think you could look at it and go, we probably should have got more out of it than we did with Saracens at home. We dominated the game really and just couldn't put any chances away. Saracens had 2 or 3 visits into our 22 and scored, but that's why they're top of the table. We just couldn't turn our possession and territory into points. And I think, unfortunately, from that point onwards, we've really struggled, and confidence has just dissipated entirely.
Well, let's turn to Saturday. I mean, the reality of it really is that it's a must win for both of us, to be honest. And the only thing we've got going for us is that we're at home. So, what do you think your game plan is going to be for trying to wrestle some sort of victory?
Well, there was a horrible post-match interview yesterday where someone mentioned that we might be kicking a lot, which, bearing in mind that I'd just come off the back of watching Gloucester Leicester and we kicked an awful lot. I can't think that seems to be what we'll probably end up doing, which is just awful. I think the advantage this year, though, is we haven't got the likes of the players that have left Bristol who, when we just daren't kick to in previous years. There doesn't seem to be that danger anymore. I think Gloucester will probably try and keep it tight, try and make you play from your 20 from your own half. But it's so difficult to judge because, as we saw from yesterday, Bristol are able to do some wonderful, wonderful things when they get the opportunity and space to do so. Whether we can keep ourselves in the game is probably the most important bit. If I'm in a bonus point at this point, I'll be happy. I'll be happy with a bonus point, just because we're so awful at the moment.
Well, I won't put you under pressure to ask for a score then. Let's just finish on a positive note though, because the Gloucester Hartpury women's team are the reigning champions. They've also made a good start to the season and are also playing our women on Friday night. It's at Shaftesbury Park, which is the home of Dings Crusaders. So maybe you could tell some of our listeners a bit about the women's team.
Yeah, the Gloucester Hartpury, also known as the Circus, they are literally the only bright light at the moment, really, from Gloucester rugby point of view. I mean, they had a back-to-back game yesterday against Leicester Tigers, our first game of the season for the girls. The championship win last season, I think, it felt really special for a lot of people within the club, not just people who've grown up, the people who've watched the women in particular, but it was how they managed to sort of reach out and grab a lot of the men supporters who might have been dismissive in the past. Myself and Jim on the pod, we're really keen to see the women's game develop, and we both watched the game yesterday. There's a lot of players that probably you may be aware of if you watch a bit of the women's rugby in the international side of things. Obviously, Mo Hunt is the one that a lot of people might know of. And then you've got people like Zoe Oldcroft, who was former World Player of the Year. Emma Singh on the wing, fullback, who's on our kicker. Really, really combative back player, but also quick as anything. Maud Muir as one of our props, who, again, another player that probably most people might have heard of if they watch a bit of the international game. And then it's sprinkling of this really good sort of young talent from Hartpury who've come up through the ranks, and we're now a really attractive place to come to play rugby. I mean, they blew away Leicester Tigers in the first 20 minutes yesterday. I think they were 28 points up after 15 minutes. Second half, obviously, things tail off. It was cold. It was like -2 by the time we finished. And overall, really, really positive. I think the only thing they yet to get right is the crowds and the way that they use the double headers at Kingsholm. Yesterday, for example, they had it after the men's game, where I think probably if there's a way of doing it logistically and having it before the men's game, getting a bit more exposure to those players and the crowd. Gloucester fans generally do turn up quite early. That I think would be a better way of doing it. I know that there are logistical challenges to that, but I think that would be a really big thing for across the league. If you can get these double headers and get the women playing first, get the crowd in, and then playing after with the men, I think it's be a massive thing for the league.
Well, given that our ladies team got a bit of a schooling down at Exeter this afternoon after a kind of fun start last Saturday. I mean, I presume you're more confident of getting a victory in that game than you are perhaps in the men's game the day after.
I would say so. I mean, one thing, we went to the women, Gloucester women played Bristol end of last season in the league before they went into the sort of playoffs and stuff, and it was quite close for a while, and I think they always seem to be quite close games. The Bristol girls tend to step up and have done since Gloucester have had a bit more of an ascendancy. I think the difference, probably similar to what happened today down in Exeter, is the Gloucester pack is really, really dominant. And I think that tends to be the big difference at the moment in the women's game. And then you've got the likes of Mo Hunt and Mia Venner as another winger who could just score from anywhere. And that's a big thing. So I'd expect the girls to win, Gloucester girls to win, probably with a bonus point. And I would actually say realistically, if you look at the top three last year, which was Gloucester, Exeter, and Sarries, probably be similar, maybe with Quins in there as well. And I'd expect they'll be up there again this season.
Okay, well, look, that's brilliant insight. Thanks for that. And one thing's for sure, at least one of the men's teams is going to get their hands on one bit of silverware this season, but it might only be the Rifles Cup. So looking forward to, I think it'll be a humdinger. Hopefully, there's obviously a lot on it. So we're looking forward to a good contest. Cheers, Ed. Yes. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Cheers.
Okay, boys. Well, that's Ed. He's always been very articulate. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, that we always talk to these people that are like really articulate on these other pods, and we never get invited on theirs. Anyway, let's move on with that.
Although he did use the word fundamental a few times, and he did remind me of Miles with his alluding. He
does, but I mean, I think he meant the fact that Gloucester also don't seem to do the fundamentals at all. I mean, they've not had a great season so far, and I think actually they're in a worse place than we are, because I think they're really struggling to see where their next win's coming from. And he made some points that George Skivington is pretty much under pressure, that their kind of defence. I mean, I was quite pleased to hear him say their goal line defence isn't very good, so that's something we could target. But their rolling maul has disappeared. They seem to lose kind of focus after a couple of phases of the backs, and he doesn't think that they're having to throw in some young lads who are undoubtedly talented but aren't really ready replacement for the ones that the names that are missing, like Hastings, Ackerman, Mercer, and so on. So it gives us some sort of hope, I think, for Saturday. I mean, he said that he'd be happy with a losing bonus point, which that's the sort of talk we like to hear. I think, are we, Miles? Are we only going to be happy with a 5 points?
Well, I mean, if we could get any more, then I'd go for it. I think you're absolutely right. This has become, let's of course about cliches, but this has become a must-win game, and I think we all appreciate that. We didn't feel as if we would get anything from Sarries, but we did. But 1 point is not enough in this truncated season. Gloucester are literally sat on our shoulders, aren't they, in the Premiership table? And a win over the other is not going to ping them massively up. However, I think to save face for Pat Lamb, I'm afraid, this is absolutely, we need 5 points this weekend. It's going to be, let's hope, a Saturday afternoon, local derby, Rifles Cup down. The weather forecast looks all right at this stage. If we do not get 5, 6, 7 tries, I think, against Gloucester, listening to Ed from Cherry Jam even, I think we as fans will be hugely disappointed.
Yeah. Well, Miles, you said it there. What can I say to that? It's a call to arms from Miles Clark.
Yeah,
but Lee's got his finger up. I don't know which way he's pointing it. But oh no, you just want to say something. I thought you were pointing it at Miles there. Anyway, what do you want to say, Lee?
I think this isn't only the Rifles Cup. This is the cementing of 8th place in the league.
Yeah,
you could be right, mate.
Yeah, that's yeah. Anyway, okay. Look, well, let's look at this. Let's just have a little go at picking the team. Because we want 5 points. So we don't quite know with injuries and stuff. But what do you think is going to be our 5 point team on Saturday? So let's quickly go. We'll do front five, back row, half backs, midfield pairing, back three. Miles, because you're the hardest. you could go with front five. Go on.
Well, let's not muck around. There didn't appear to be, we played on that horrible pitch this weekend. There didn't appear to be any injuries. I'm afraid we've got to go for it. There's no mucking around in any shape or form.
Who's playing hooker, Miles?
Well,
that's the one.
Thacker.
Yes.
On TNT, the insulting thing was that they said Harry Thacker's on the bench again, and then Harry Randall they called him.
They did call him Harry Randall. You're right. That's outrageous.
That was outrageous. So I say, we're going to go back. We won a fast game down at our own stomping ground. We're going to go Genge, Thacker, Sinclair up front, and as they're fit and playing brilliantly, James Dunn and Joe Batley back as locks.
I would say absolutely with you, Miles. The only thing I would say is I would have gone Genge, Thacker, Sinclair just to get the numbers in order. But that's a good front five. Love it.
Absolutely.
Lee, back row, hit me with it.
Right. So, well, we've got Jay Keenan, haven't we?
Yeah.
Jay Keenan at 6. Yeah. We've got obviously Dan Thomas at 7, top man. Fitzarden at 8. Boom.
Yeah.
Job done.
And we don't really know whether Bradbury, what sort of length of injury he is, but he'll be, if he's okay, I think a bench for him. But like it. I think so. I think Thomas got to start. Okay, I'll go halfbacks. Shido, I think, will start. I think his kicking, he'll prefer to kick at Ashton. He'll like to kick back at Ashton Gate again. I think he played all right. I think he looked at he made a great little step and pop to Batley for the try. I think I think at the moment he's going to stay.
We've got no one else. Move on. Number 9.
We got Jimmy Williams maybe, but anyway, the other 9 there is a debate. Marmion looked sharp when he came on. He's always looked sharp. But is it easy to be sharp when you come on? Part of me thinks there's a chance he could start, but I think at home with Randall having been captain above, I think he'll stick with Harry, and Harry will be really relishing the opportunity. So that's me. Okay, now this is where we can open what is being known as amongst our small circle as the Vakatawa debate. So Miles, we've got to guarantee that Janci van Rensburg is going to go 12. So who is going to go outside centre? Lee is obviously going to say Vakatawa. You're probably going to say, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know.
He's putting Jimmy in there, aren't you? You're putting Jimmy in.
Like I said last week, it probably won't happen. I'm going to put Jimmy Williams and Bernard in the centre partnership. It worked well for the first couple of matches, but Pat doesn't listen to us really, so he'll probably stick with JVR and Vakatawa, trudging along back on some grass and see how it goes. But and that's where we'll be. I'd like to see a bit of a change, but it won't happen.
Well, can I just say though, I do think like the Vakatawa debate has been a 50-50, shout, hasn't it? But why can we not bring him off a little bit? Why can't Pat bring Vakatawa off slightly earlier and give Big Jimmy a little run out? So that he's Vakatawa's still building up the fitness, and we all know that. But just bring him off a little bit earlier, and then let Jimmy do his thing as well. So I think there's a shout for both.
Can I just get Miles's spanner? Get my hands right around the spanner and then throw the spanner into those works that you've created.
Are you going to throw Piers in?
No. Piers, I think, is going to be out for a bit. I'm thinking World Cup Fijian, Kalavetti Ravuvu. Now, he came on at wing. He's clearly now up to the system. That's where he plays in the centre. Actually, and I hate to say it, and I feel, is he going to leapfrog over Jimmy as a possible the replacement for the centres? And Jimmy, I don't know. I'm not sure he will start him, but he is a World Cup player. He's an international player, and as they said on comms, it's taken 7 rounds for our international signing to make an appearance. So Or is Pat? Do you think Pat might leave him for the Champions League when we haven't really got?
Well, let's
You know,
hope
we've
not.
got a shot
I
to nothing.
suspect. Yeah, I think if we are, going into the second half well up against Gloucester, get the boy on and just show some more magic. I mean, Ashton Gate would love it, wouldn't they?
They would. We need a hero.
Fijian. We need another hero. Vrimi at the moment is not my hero, so let's get a Fijian in instead, who's not going to be running along like he's in jam.
Oh, by the way, I sent him a DM with your address, Miles.
Vrimi or Calavetti?
Brimmy, change the locks, mate. Change the locks. Okay, well, look, Miles is going to stick, and we're finishing off with our back three. I think Malins is a shoe-in. I think Gabsy Batoy is a shoe-in. I think, and I just want to reiterate again how I thought he played really well. I'm really, he is a hero. He's a fan favourite now, Gabs, and he's showing us the Bears way that sometimes we wonder where that's gone. But the other question is, what do we do on the other wing? Do we stick with Rich Lane? I mean, they've got two flying wingers. We've got to think about that. They got Thorley and they got Reece Zammit.
Yeah. So hence the reason Rich Lane's got to play for me. I know, he's a fullback, but his positional sense is spot on. So for me, Rich Lane plays on the wing.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we'll probably see Rich. We know he's a quality player, and he's got a big boot as well, and that's kind of it. That could be important as well, because we want to be pushing Gloucester back into their half. We don't want them getting a sniff of territory and possession. So I think Lane with a boot is quite important, and Malins to start, and Malins and Gabs to maybe mix it up a bit and start some counter attacks. I think will be good.
Yeah, I think that we have to hit this game, hit the ground running right from the kick-off this game. And I feel like against Gloucester, we need to be commanding and dominant, and we need to cut out the errors and the mistakes. But it's one of those games where I think we need to be on top of it all the way through and just completely dominate them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's not long now, boys. We will find out soon enough. Okay, lads. Well, I think we'll move on to our last thing. But before we do that, I remember I've got to do this bit. You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate. If you like what you hear, then leave us a rating or even a review, particularly on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Twitter at Bears Beyond Gate. You can find us on Facebook at Bears Beyond the Gate, and also on Instagram at Bears Beyond the Gate. And if you really want to, and you've got some time on your hands, you could email us at bearsbeyondthegate@gmail.com, and hopefully one of us will reply if we find a space in our busy lives. Now, Lee, you've got your hand up, which makes me think you want to say something very profound.
No, not profound. Just very quickly, we didn't say congratulations to Jake Heenan on his 100th appearance, did we?
We didn't, and we should do.
That was a bit of a slip up. So, congrats to Jake.
Not only is he, I was going to say, not only has he got 100 appearances, he's also managed to open 3 coffee shops as well in that time, which is pretty impressive. So
now down to 2.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. 2. And so fair play. That's. I mean, how many other players have done that? So fair play to Jake. Okay. Right. So our final little segment, boys, is we're going to have a little chat about the women's game. We've said that, or the women's team, I should say. We've said that we're going to make a concerted effort to do this, and I think it's really, really important, particularly since the whole game is being given a massive push through TNT and also through social media. So we obviously, Miles and me saw them beat Sale last weekend, but this weekend they had a slightly more difficult assignment down at Sandy Park. And unfortunately, they came out with nothing. They came out with no points whatsoever. They lost reasonably comfortably, I'd say, to Exeter. But it was on telly, and I did actually manage to watch the game. But we also did commission yet another roving reporter, a long-term listener of ours, Marcus Watts, who very kindly sent us back some very short reports from the game, and we can listen to those now.
Hi gents, Marcus Watts here, Bears Beyond the Gate listener, Bristol Bears and Bristol Bears women's season ticket holder, reporting in following today's trip to Sandy Park. After last week's sizable but sometimes scrappy victory over Sale, it was obvious that we'd need to up our game against last year's top 4 finishers Exeter if we had any chance of taking home a win. Heading into the game, I was hoping the front 5 roses would give us the platform to take the game to Exeter, but the absence of the experienced Amber Reid in midfield was a concern, as she is the glue that holds our backs together both in attack and defence. The game started well for the Bears, dominating the first 7 minutes of play, retaining possession and stretching the Exeter defence, ultimately leading to a try for our number 8, Gabriella Nigrelli, turned into a 7-pointer by the boot of Holly Aitchison. From there on to half-time, however, Exeter dominated possession and territory with tries in the 21st and 35th minutes to go in at half-time with a well-deserved 14-7 lead, which could have been much more if not for the stern defence, with some crucial turnovers by the Jackal Queen, Hannah Bottoman. My hope that the tide would turn in the second half was soon scuppered as Exeter scored again in the 45th minute to open up a 21-7 lead. At this point, things were looking bleak, and 11 minutes later, Exeter went to the posts again to open up a 3-score lead. By this time, the Bears had sent for reinforcements, with Roe Marston Mulhern, Simi Pam and Kira Bevan starting to punch holes and make breaks, finally leading to a try by Sarah Byrne in the 70th minute, which also saw Exeter down to 14 following a Chiefs player trying to leave Sandy Park with some of Simi's hair in her kit bag. This try brought back hope of a grandstand finish, but sadly it was not to be, as Claudia MacDonald, England Rose and firm home fans' favourite skipped outside the Bears' defence to seal 5 points. Overall, a really dogged performance with lots of committed defence, but just too many handling errors to be able to get any regular field position to trouble a strong Exeter side. Next up on Friday, a home game versus last season's champions Gloucester Hartpury. A huge challenge which will need us to bring our A game, really front up and cut out this week's mistakes.
Okay, boys, it's again really, really nicely done by our listeners. There's some quality people out there that can send some excellent reports. It was interesting. I mean, I think Marcus echoed what I thought really by watching it on telly, is that even the first 5 minutes we pummeled their line. And it was kind of multi-phase. We then scored, and I thought, wow, we're going to do well here. And then for about the rest of the time, we never really got hold of the ball, and we couldn't really get any territory momentum. So it kind of opened my eyes to how good Exeter are as a team, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, I must say though, I mean, it's still early in the season yet, Pete.
Yeah,
we've still got a lot of rugby to play. Yeah. I think. It was disappointing because the girls I think are on to something really good this year, and sometimes it could be one of those kind of chastening defeats where you learn from and you come back stronger as a team. So I think we've still got a lot of positives to take in defeat.
Yeah, and I think Emily Scarrett was doing the co-commentary, and she made that point. She said it's probably not a bad one for Bears to lose, because they are going to play some teams that are good like that, Saracens, Gloucester, and actually it'd be good to get a bit of a chance to reflect and review very, very quickly. I mean, a couple of things that I took from the game. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching it again. It was great fun. Hannah Bottoman is an absolute jackal menace. She and also Sarah Burns to a certain extent, but they are England players, but she absolutely loves getting in there and getting her hands on the ball. She was quality. And I mean, actually, to be fair, it hadn't been for her in the first half, they could well have scored quite a few more, because they pounded our line. They got into our red zone a few times, and it was Hannah that came out with the ball. So I just wanted to mention her. I mean, Sarah Byrne, our front row, our England front 5. I mean, they were up against some internationals. There was quite a lot of Americans and Canadians in the pack, and it really showed that there were some sort of experienced internationals. The only thing that slightly worried me a little bit, not really worried me, that I noticed that their line speed was really, really good, and it kind of got a little bit like the men, where we went sideways a lot and went back again and went sideways, and then kind of got isolated. We just didn't look like we could quite work out how to break the line. And I mean, Holly Aitchison, is a class player. She did a nice little chip in the first half, and she tried her best, and we made a few little half breaks, but then again there was a lot of mistakes at key moments that were just disappointing. And it was just hard. I think it made me realise. I think we were missing Amber Reid in midfield a lot, but then we had the two Scottish internationals. I think it's I can't remember her name. Oh, I should have looked it up. Anyway, she was in the centre, and it was hard. They were a good side, Exeter a good side. So there was no shame in that. And I think, when Simi Pam came on, she was she looked really good. Kira Bevan came on at scrum half and looked really, really tidy and actually made a couple of breaks that then came to nothing. So it was really, 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 really good fun. And the one thing I did notice about the game, because it was being reffed by one of the men's Prem refs, it was Anthony Woodthorpe. The ladies generally, I think, are more honest. They were really rolling away from the from the tackle really, really obviously, and it kind of made me realise how sneaky the men are all the time. It's slowing the ball down. Because they've just been doing it so long. Because the ladies are kind of more honest. It feels that it was a much clean. Their rucks were much cleaner, which kind of meant the game flowed so much better. So it was kind of interesting to make that. I mean, I don't know whether it was a one-off or not.
Sneaky or more professional?
Well, yeah, both. No, absolutely. I mean, absolutely professional, mate. I mean, that's part of the game, and it just made me realise how good the ones that do it well are.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, and I kind of hope that in some ways it doesn't change the women's game because it just made it flow so much more. It's so much nicer when the ball is quick and available, and that was partly to do with the way that the breakdown worked. But anyway, so yeah, overall, it was really good. Now, Miles, we also, Ed gave us a bit of an insight to Gloucester Hartbury, who are visiting Dings Crusaders, Shaftesbury Park on Friday, the reigning champions, and actually, based on what Ed said, like a really seriously solid pack as well, and a decent team. Yeah. You, I heard, are thinking about getting out of Southville on Friday and driving up there.
Yeah,
this is true.
Well, absolutely. I tried to persuade my children to come, but they're having none of it. So at the moment, I have bought a ticket. A sole roving reporter from Bears Beyond the Gate will be attending on Friday night. And as you say, we are going up against the current champions, Gloucester Hartbury, who, as Ed said, are a tough unit to beat. So the girls and Dave Ward need a tough team talk, a look at the mistakes potentially. Let's not say mistakes, but where Exeter were much stronger over the weekend today, and try and overcome them and make some changes, because it's going to be a tough gig on Friday night. But I shall definitely go up and support the women's game there.
You know where you're going, yeah?
Shaftesbury Park, yeah, of course I do, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just park on the motorway, and run it, get over the fence.
Well,
I was Googling.
I was Googling that. I'm somehow going to have to leave the car somewhere near Frenchay and hot foot it over there. And anyway, and I shall take the little recorder.
It's got a car park there. It's a quality ground, Dings, and you got a little kind of ticket office that you go through. It's good. Anyway, Lee, you're going to say something.
I should try and get some little post-match recordings as well.
Expecting it. Yeah.
Good.
No, I was going to say I'm doing my best to try and join Miles on Friday night as well. So, but I was really expecting Miles to say, why are we playing two teams, Gloucester and Hartbury? But he didn't fall into the trap, did he?
I mean, we're doing our bit. We are basically going to be reporting on a double header this weekend, aren't we? Yeah. So, we're going to try as much as we can to get the women's game included. So I'm going on a Friday night. We've got the men on the Sunday. So this is full on
Saturday.
Bristol Bears. Saturday, sorry. So, yeah, it's going to be a very exciting weekend, and we're going to hope to get a double result on them Gloucester folk.
Making history, boys, making history. Right, I've got one last thing I wanted to point out to you. I don't know if you saw this on social media, but I saw a post from Andy Aren today. And it was
Benetton?
No, well, exactly. It was a picture of the whole of the Benetton team. I assume they won at the weekend. And Andy had put something like, it was basically something like, loving playing here, great bunch of lads. And then there was 2 sentences of Italian underneath.
From Andy.
So you obviously don't look at our Twitter feed, because I reposted it saying Andy
with the translation. I hope
I got to find it. No, didn't have time to do that. But I actually very quickly. I've got to find it while I'm talking to you. I reposted it, and here it is. it was Andy Wren, and it said, another great win for this team. We keep moving forward. Un'altra grande vittoria per questa squadra. Continuame ad andare, which I now realise is exactly the same thing in Italian. So I reckon their social media account is, or he's just put it through Google Translate.
Google Translate.
Fair play to Andy Wren. And what a brilliant tweet. It's so good to hear he's having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I honestly thought you were going to turn around and say it was going to be Italian for Gert Lush.
Well, it looks almost like that, yeah. And there's a lovely little picture of him on the corner, and he's got such a happy look on his face. And I should also mention, of talking of kind of Bears abroad, almost. I mean, well, he is abroad. Joycey's clearly having a great time at Connacht as well.
Brilliant.
So following this trend of like Bristol players like Sam Bedlow, like Andy Wren, like Joe Joyce, who leave the club and then seem to have like loads of success elsewhere, and Tiff Eden and stuff like that. So anyway, boys,
I watched Joycey last week playing for Connacht, and it just still seems so weird seeing him play rugby in a different colour, different team shirt. It's so odd.
Yeah, it is, but it's a good move for him, and I'm pleased that he is doing well. Anyway, boys, I think that's it. We will see you. Well, I won't see you Friday because I've got to take my daughter to netball training, so I can't go. But I'll be there. Got a big one on Saturday. I've got quite a few mates of mine coming as well to the game on Saturday. It's an afternoon kickoff. It could get messy. There is a curry booked in afterwards as well. So
I've got Christmas do straight afterwards as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be a messy old day.
So we'll have to make sure we dust ourselves off for the pod next Sunday. But anyway, boys, it's lovely to talk to you. That's it for now. So everybody out there, thanks very much for all your contributions. Stay safe and up the Bears.